Welcome to the Real Assets, Real Leaders podcast, a show where we meet with leaders from across the energy, infrastructure, and real asset space to talk through their careers, their motivation, and their leadership ethos. My name is Joshua Fowkes, founder of Sonderometric Executive Search. I hope you enjoy the show. Today, we are delighted to be here with Mike Cooke, Managing Director of Vital Energi, for what I'm sure will be a very insightful conversation. Mike, welcome. It's great to have you here. I wonder if you would start by giving us just a couple of minutes introduction to who you are and what you do.
Hi, Josh, and yeah, thanks very much for the invite, and it's great to talk to you this morning. Yeah, so I'm Mike Cooke, and I'm Managing Director at Vital Energi Utilities, and we're part of the Vital Holdings group of companies. We are an absolute specialist in decarbonisation and supporting the UK's journey to net zero. As Managing Director, I have the challenging job of managing all of our directors at Vital Energi. So that creates a really interesting challenge because naturally all of those individuals are great leaders in themselves. So working across a group of great people, serving, as you rightly identify, a really emerging market of delivering the UK's net zero ambitions.
Absolutely. And we're going to spend some time talking about your career. We're going to hear your thoughts on a number of interesting topics. But I think what would be really helpful for our listeners is just to get a bit more of an insight into Vital Energi. So a bit about the mission of the business, a bit about the way that the business has grown. I mean, they're a very well-known organisation within the UK, but for those who may be outside the sector or for those who are a bit further afield, it'd be really helpful to get a bit more insight, if that's okay.
Of course, Josh, yeah. So I think Vital's work really, certainly over the last 11 years I've been there, has really grown to support the UK and customers' needs to deliver both energy savings and support the energy transition towards net zero. We know the long-term energy transition requires us to see the electrification of heat and the reduction of fossil fuels. So Vital are working really closely with a number of customers across the UK, so everyone in the public sector, local authorities, healthcare, university infrastructure, education, and then very much into the commercial industrial space, and very much supporting people to look at how they use energy today. So we're a very analytical organisation at the starting point. You know, if anyone wants to learn about our net zero journey, it's really looking at your energy consumption today. And then we look to see how we can reduce that, and then how we can support a transition to reducing fossil fuel consumption. And that's a real challenge in today's market, because today's market sees gas prices continuing to be really low, and electrical prices or electricity prices continuing to be very much a multiple of gas prices, such that it's very, very difficult to encourage people to go on a journey of using more electricity, for example, for heating, when actually, even with the efficiency of heat pumps, turning on a gas boiler will always be much more cost effective today, but has a much more significant impact in terms of carbon and not being able to achieve that net zero journey. So our big space is to try and educate customers, educate institutions, and take people on a journey of change. So our mission is to very much at this point in time support those organisations that are leading organisations. They see the energy transition as something they want to be part of the leadership movement for. And we are absolutely proud to be working with local authorities and, as I say, that commercial industrial space, education establishments in supporting them on their journeys and commitments to net zero. And this is a real challenge across the UK because everyone generally has a different flight path for net zero. You'll see a number of organisations, huge infrastructure organisations such as Gatwick Airport being very much communicating to the public their net zero ambitions of 2030 and having created a partnership with Gatwick to support their journey. And then we work with other organisations, or we have visibility of other organisations which set a destination for net zero much more into the future. So 2035, 2040, 2045 and 2050. So there's a real mix of journeys that organisations are going on. And that creates the real challenge. Because you really can only, in today's market, support organisations that want to lead in an efficient way from a time perspective, as opposed to those that are thinking about that journey over a 10 or 20-year period.
Mm.
So that's a real challenge for us because we are in a sector, as we'll discuss today, which is very much resource restricted
Yeah.
and limited.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thinking about the different journeys that those end customers go on, um, a lot of organizations out there are maybe specialists in very specific technologies, or they push certain technologies. But Vital seem to have a much more technology agnostic view and actually seem to be more solutions focused around the client. I wonder if maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Very much, Josh. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We are absolutely open to all technologies. We recognise that there isn't, I suppose, a one size that fits all.
Mm,
So over the last 10 or 11 years, I've seen combined heat and power unit CHPs being very much a force of nature in terms of the energy transition.
mm,
And they've had a huge impact in being able to develop, for example, heat networks. So your combined heat and power units are predominantly using either a biomass fuel or a gas fuel, and they're creating electricity at a far more efficient rate than buying from grid. And they're creating what we'd describe as a waste heat source that we can utilize for heat networks. So that type of technology has been absolutely huge in terms of creating a movement towards heat networks, because people may be familiar with language such as the spark gap. So being able to buy gas at a rate which is far cheaper than buying the units of electricity, and being able to pay for the asset, the CHP, and even the heat network and the private wire as a result of those savings over a long-term plan. So we've seen that type of movement looking back. Where we are today, we're very much in the decarbonisation part of our journey, where organisations are looking predominantly to see the electrification of heat,
mm,
the utilisation of curtailed electricity as we see renewables grow across the UK.
mm.
So curtailed electricity occurs where generation from renewables is greater than the grid can accommodate or can utilise, and there's an opportunity to take that curtailed energy and use it as a heat source.
Mm.
So we have a project up in the northeast where we are using wind energy to run a huge electric boiler,
Wow.
12 megawatt electric boiler, and that electric boiler will only run when the wind energy is available.
Mm.
And when the wind energy isn't available, it is using biomass heat. So a real
Wow.
decarbonisation project of multiple technologies. Looking forward, we'll see that diversification of technologies continue to grow.
Mm.
We'll continue to see a range of heat pump technologies. Ever increasing efficiency is often referred to as the coefficient of performance, or COP, where heat pumps alongside electro boilers and thermal storage and even phase change materials will all support our net zero flight paths.
Mm. No, fantastic. And that's really interesting to have seen that growth journey that Vital have been on. And I wonder if you can maybe speak into that a bit as well, because Vital Energy, from when you joined, probably looks like a very different organization now, and that journey that the business and that you've been on over those. I mean, how many years are we talking about now?
Yes, I've had the privilege now of being at Vital for 11 years, and
Wow.
when I joined back in 2011, we'd have posted accounts which showed a revenue of around about 29 million,
Wow.
really good profitability still of around about £1.5 million, and we had 100, just short of 150 people within the organisation. Fast forward 11 years, and we're not far short of 800 people in our organisation. Our most recent accounts will post revenue of just short of 250 million, and we've maintained
Wow.
a really good level of profitability at 13.5 million. So a really strong track record of year-on-year growth. Nominally around about 15% year-on-year growth, and that goes alongside efficiencies in how we operate as an organisation.
Mm.
But equally, we've very much had to diversify the skills within our organisation.
Mm.
We don't do today what we just did 11 years ago.
Mm.
And that's massively part of our success story as an organisation, that we've always been prepared to look at the boundaries that we operate in today and then look tomorrow to stretch them.
Mm.
And that's a huge lesson that we continue to learn every day of the week.
Mm.
I'd still use the phrase that every day is a school day at Vital Energy, and that's predominantly because we are pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
we're probably still falling down a few cracks where we're learning lessons, but equally, we have some fantastic achievements and celebrations. Customers that we work with, people within our business, the growth of people within our business, and I know we'll touch on that a little bit
Mm.
more this morning. But I think that growth and learning journey that our employees and our customers share has been part of Vital success.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that has been really great to see from the outside as well is that you actually have a real clarity over where you want to go as a business. You know, it's not kind of, oh, well, we'll see how the market develops. You've got a clear mission and a clear growth strategy to get to the next stage. Could you maybe share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we're really hungry for the future.
Mm.
So I think at Vital, we've, over the last 12 months, we've really defined our purpose. We shared a number of sort of collaborative internal events through the course of, I suppose, the back end of 2023 and then through 2024, where we've taken layers of our organization and we've brought them together in a way where we've really defined our purpose together.
Mm.
And that's very much around our growth journey, but equally what I suppose underpins all of our commitment. And that's commonly referred to now as our why.
Mm.
So within the Vital Energy organization, we have a common purpose, our why, which is around protecting our planet for future generations. And it's only when we talk about that do we really understand what it means to each individual. And within our organization, we've created our individual whys to support that journey as well.
Mm.
But taking our why forward into a more practical business set of objectives, the focus has been to work together, to harness opportunities across our business, to create a business without boundaries. So I've historically worked within organizations that have been very much focused on silo working, geographically and both sector, services type. So very complex organizations. And at Vital, we're booking that trend. Whilst we see the need to recognize growth regionally and create regional offices, that's really allowing us to tap into resources across the UK, which we know are there. But by having a presence in those cities, such as Swansea and Newcastle, our offices up in Scotland, by having presence across the UK, it allows us really to secure resources, the highest quality resources across the UK, because people feel the ability to go and work in an office locally still is a key attraction for them, as opposed to just being a business based out of the Northwest or with an office in London.
Yeah.
So growth sees the regionalisation of our business, but we still have a commitment to work as a business without boundaries and an organisation that is there really to create new communities. And that really supports the learning journey. So we recognise that we aren't able to simply recruit people into our organisation that are absolutely suited to what we do. There is a huge need for us to take employees, both those that work with us today and those that will work with us in the future, on a learning journey. And that's very much around the skills that they'll need, the technologies, the sectors we work across, and actually around how we win and deliver our work, because it is very different. Explaining to a customer that you're going to support their journey to net zero when actually there isn't a history of organisations like Vital Energy delivering net zero journeys across the UK. So it does feel like we are certainly in the pioneering and trailblazing era of net zero at the moment, which is really exciting. We have some incredible young people within our organisation who are absolute sponges to those wise, more experienced individuals and love to take knowledge from them and learn very rapidly what it is we do. And then all of a sudden you watch them presenting to customers as we do today. We often take our graduates to presentation forums with customers, and they are absolutely brave enough to ask our customers the difficult questions when a customer will say, would you like to ask us a question, Vital Energy? And it's our graduates that'll ask the question, and it's fantastic to see just that growth in individuals and that confidence across the team.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I really want to dig into that a little bit more. But before I do that, I think understanding a bit more about your career, Mike, would probably add some really helpful context to that discussion around kind of skill shortages, because you didn't always work in energy, did you?
Not at all, Josh. No, you're absolutely right. Um, I would probably still be called, well, in today's world, I'm definitely a lifer. So I've only worked for two organizations. So back in the dark old days of 1993, I responded to an advert in the local paper.
Mm.
So I lived in Warrington at the time, and my mum gave me a nudge and said, "Look, there's an advert there for apprentices at a company in Warrington. You should apply for that." I, like most teenagers at that point, were at 1993. I was just finishing my A levels in Warrington at college. Uh, Not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination. I found the golf course a much nicer attraction than actually spending time studying. My sisters were phenomenal studiers, really, really clever. So I lacked that, I suppose, that perseverance to education that I could see my sisters definitely had. So I responded to the advert and went through a series of aptitude tests, and there was a gentleman that led that process for the company that were back in the day called Hayden Young. So they were an old established building services company,
Mm.
formerly known as GN Hayden. Big history organization that ultimately were owned by BICC Cables, the BICC group, and then Balfour Beatty.
Mm.
So I started in 1993 and went on a 4-year apprenticeship. I was really lucky. My apprenticeship was based out of Liverpool College, and it was a tailored program that back in the day Hayden Young had put together, where all of the apprentices nationally within Hayden Young were brought together in Liverpool to learn together
Oh,
on
wow.
a program that had been tailored just to Hayden Young, and they'd done that in partnership working with the college in Liverpool. We lived on campus, so we lived the student life for 12 weeks of the year. So we did a series of block releases, and for those 4 years, we learned everything about pipes and wires.
Mm.
We were building services engineers, so we knew how to design ventilation systems. We knew about medical gases in hospitals. We knew how to do lighting systems and power system. We were trained to be design engineers.
Mm.
So a technical apprenticeship, very much about drawing things, writing schedules, producing specifications, and working as teams to deliver coursework. We'd often have the all nighters. So our college block releases would often be Monday, Tuesday into Liverpool, and then the back end of the week, absolutely all night in it to get the work done. So there's
Mm.
a proper rebel part to the way in which we behave, but that was all part of the fun of it. Away from college, we'd have coursework, and we'd work then back in the business. Our offices were based in Warrington, and that four year period was a huge growth and acceleration of learning.
Mm.
A very intense program, and I finished that apprenticeship in 1997 with colleagues that were friends for life.
Mm.
We had a great time and really grew together. But what Hayden Young did really well at that point in time is they continued that apprenticeship program year on year. So as I was coming to the end of my 4-year period, there was already 3 years behind me that were quickly coming up and following suit.
Mm.
And as I left that program, another year entered that program. So there was a real culture of growing young talent,
Mm.
picking people literally off the street or out of college or out of university and teaching them about pipes and wires.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me because it absolutely created a legacy.
Mm.
Hayden Young, the individuals that led that apprenticeship program, created something for people like me that was very unique.
Mm.
And that definitely resonated with me as I've grown in my role at Vital Energy, and we'll probably touch on that as we're chatting this morning. So I think that apprenticeship piece then led into what was about a 7-year period of project engineering, project management, and winning work.
Mm.
So between 1997 and 2004, I occupied a role which was delivering projects, predominantly as a design technical lead, but actually then project managing, doing the commercial deals, and very much selling the organisation I worked for at that time to close orders.
Mm.
And I often worked with, ironically, people that I actually still work with today. So there are people at Vital Energy that I work with today that worked in the teams that I worked in between 1997 and 2004.
Wow, that's quite some history, that.
Yeah, massive, massive, and great friendships as well. 2004 was a huge year for me because I then became a area manager at Hayden Young, which was probably a huge step. I look back now and I scratch my head when I walked through that door into the area manager's office on the Monday morning. I thought, well, what does an area manager do?
Yeah.
And that was a massive wake up call for me when I look back now in terms of how we onboard people within organizations.
Mm.
You absolutely cannot take for granted that people understand what's expected of them. I was put in that goldfish bowl when I was at the age of 29, area manager. It was a £40 million business unit. We were delivering a number of really complex healthcare projects across the Northwest. And we had a core business of projects that included incredible schemes like the Liverpool Arena on the waterfront in Liverpool, which was being built for the City of Culture. Huge challenges and a really difficult transition for me. And I think what I took from that period of time was mention the need to be onboarded properly, but actually needing to be managed. I look back now and I think there's probably 5 areas of management that are really important for me. Being able to set objectives for somebody or a team, being able to understand their workload and help them prioritize what they're doing, 2 other items. I think then fourthly, to act as a sounding board for them, to encourage them to think, make strong decisions, but ultimately support them in what they're doing. And then finally, to give them some cuddles and praise at the end of it when they've done a great job, to celebrate the good stuff and making decisions. Because actually, if you positively reaffirm great progress and good things that have happened, what you actually find, and for all of those of you that have children, you'll see if you give them praise, they'll continue to do great things.
Yeah.
And that's no different within the workplace. If you have a high-performing team and you recognize that, then they'll continue to be high-performing, repeating that success. So I think looking back, that was a really difficult period of time. And then that period of time was hugely important for me as an individual, growing and learning, understanding around that from a project role, your experience would be starting a project to ending a project. But from a management perspective, it was actually just a monthly cycle of getting through the accounts every month and managing performance. And there was a transition there from what it looked like in a project role to being in a leadership role. Setting budgets, managing the P&L, and growing a team. That very much became an even more significant development in 2008 when Balfour Beatty decided that Hayden Young and Balfour Kilpatrick should become one company, an organisation known as Balfour Beatty Engineering Services. And that was a huge transition. We saw a change in the commercial landscape, the financial landscape that was supporting growth in the UK at that time to, in essence, what was a recession period. And Balfour Beatty took a really strong decision to recognise that the future landscape of business was going to require us to cut our cloth to suit. So being part of that journey to bring 2 incredibly historic organisations together, 2 different cultures, and watch that transition and be part of that transition where I was involved in reshaping the business, reshaping teams, and ultimately becoming a regional director within Balfour Beatty Engineering Services. So 5 years of that experience then took me to an area in 2013, the summer of 2013, where I could see the landscape for construction in the UK to be really flat, and I personally needed a different challenge.
Sure.
You'll know from our conversation today that my career started in 1993, and 2013 was 20 years on.
A reflective moment for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I took that, I suppose, as a watershed moment in my career to go and do something different. And I was really lucky. A number of colleagues that had left Balfour Beatty Engineering Services had gone to Vital Energi. And Vital Energi were part of Balfour Beatty's supply chain at that point in time, in a very small organisation. And I met with their MD at the time, Ian Whitelock, who shared the vision. He shared what Vital Energi were doing, what colleagues at Vital Energi were starting to do in energy performance contracts. And I absolutely could see the opportunity there. It was completely different. The organization was much, much smaller. We've touched on the sort of revenue that the business had, a number of employees. My role at Balfour Beatty gave me probably a revenue at that point in time of my direct responsibility of 100 million, yet I was going to leave that and go to an organization like Vital that were much lower than that. So some people question my decision making, and I suppose to those people today, they would probably look back and say, "Wow, that was probably risky, but visionary." Is how I would like to look at it. And Ian absolutely inspired me with the Vital Energy plans, and I probably use a lot of what Ian shared with me back in the day then to today inspire people to come to Vital Energy. Because a lot of the messaging hasn't yet, it hasn't changed. It's grown. So my journey to Vital started with that realization that I'd been in a much larger organization and was stepping into an organization that had a huge desire for growth. And my job, alongside Ian and Gary Fielding, our chairman, and a number of the other directors, was to achieve that growth. And that growth has come through a learning journey. So I personally spent time onboarding myself. So having realized when I made that transition to the area manager role that I walked into that office on a Monday morning not knowing what the job was. When I walked into Vital, I made sure I created an onboarding plan for myself, which supported by Ian and Gary and other colleagues, allowed me to grow in that role. I took personal ownership of that onboarding plan. And I think that's a massive message to anyone joining a new organization. Don't wait to be given something. Take responsibility for it and be accountable for your own growth.
Absolutely.
So I think so that got me to Vital Energy, and from there, it's been whistle stop. Huge revenue growth as we've touched on today. Huge people growth, and that's not without its challenges. We'll probably touch on it in more detail, but being able to recruit people into Vital Energy from other sectors is really difficult. But it's one of the best things we do.
Yeah, and I'd really love to dive into that, because I imagine that your own experience of coming from a related but not the same sector and actually moving into the energy space probably gives you a perspective different to a lot of other business owners. I mean, just to give a bit more broader context, so 2020, National Grid estimate that we need around 400,000 new jobs to created in order to both achieve and also sustain a net zero economy. And I actually hear a lot of companies within the industry complain about, a skill shortage across the energy sector. But actually, what I see is really relatively little effort in actually, well, how are we going to proactively address that issue? But one of the things, knowing you and seeing the work that you've done at Vital over the years, is that Vital actually seemed to take a really different approach to that. And I know that a lot of individuals in your organization have come from other sectors. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your view of repurposing skilled people from outside of the energy sector, and how you use them to really address what is ultimately one of the biggest issues in society today in trying to get to net zero.
I love that, Josh. So, so your reference there to repurposing, I'm gonna correct that already with untapping their potential, releasing their potential, and that's what we really see. So, I've got some great stories I can share with you.
Please.
But when I joined Vital, I did the normal stuff of who do I think are the rising stars or the superstars within the organisation at Balfour Beatty Engineering Services that I know I could be in the trenches with, and when I say let's go for it, they'll come up out of the trenches with me, and we'll run to the finishing line together. And those people first to join, they were the first movers. So they were people with like-minded ability, like-minded values, and a desire to do something different. So I suppose, as with any business leader, it's an absolute no-brainer to not look for the low-hanging fruit. And so that was the first move from me. Take people with me on a journey to Vital Energy who absolutely were up for the challenge and I knew would fit in really well. And those people are still there today. Many of them have done 10 or 11 years service just as I have. And we still have incredible friendships that we take onto a golf course or on a night out, or we just use in our team environments.
I hope you're enjoying this week's instalment. This podcast is brought to you by Sonder and Metric, an executive search firm facilitating leadership appointments across the energy, infrastructure, and real asset space. If you're looking to attract top-tier leaders to drive your value creation strategy and realise your growth plans, Sonder and Metric's proven search strategy guarantee exceptional results, all whilst reducing the risk associated with leadership hiring. For more information, visit our website www.sonderandmetric.com.
I think then some of the really quirky challenges of continuing to grow require us to look beyond the spaces that we're familiar with recruitment from. So I could tell you today the story about the chef that now designs solar panels at Vital Energi and solar systems. He works as part of a team that win solar projects. And that really is a great way of showing in that individual he has huge desire to work hard, improve himself, understand new technologies, and ultimately be part of a team that succeeds. So a really driven individual. I've got a lot of time for him. Really great guy to be part of a team and to see how somebody with no engineering knowledge can learn what we do at Vital Energi. And it's an absolute credit to the team around him that they share and collaborate with that individual. I could tell you this story around the recruitment of work-winning resources into an organization that probably was very stereotypical in terms of our working patterns. So we were, as an organization, very much let's call it the 8 till 5 business, Monday to Friday, back in the day. And we recruited individuals into our organization that only wanted to work 4 days a week. They wanted to be parents 3 days a week. So they wanted, I say parents 3 days a week, they wanted to have more time at home to look after their family and grow their family because their children were young. So we've adapted as an organization way before the pandemic years to having to realize that if you want the very best people in the industry, you need to be flexible. So you don't need to look at them and ask them to change. You as an organization or you as a leader need to convince other leaders within your organization to change and think differently. And then I can talk to you about an individual that I met at an event we did in Manchester a few years ago. So this individual was a graduate, but he was an assistant at an event for Manchester Central. So we were holding an event in the summer of 2022. It was an event where we had customers speaking, and we were talking to individuals across our sector around the challenges of delivering heat networks and renewable projects. The individual I'm referring to today was an employee of Manchester Central, a graduate, just trying to make some money to find what his next job would be. And he approached me at that event, and several years later, he's on our graduate program, working out of our Blackburn office as part of our design team.
Wow.
So we have an absolute belief that we will find the potential and a fit for everyone that wants to be on our journey with us. It isn't without its challenges. It isn't without its mistakes. But I think one of the key lessons from business leadership is recognizing that potential and great people come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and they're often invisible to you. And it's about being brave enough to have the right conversations, try and create a career path for individuals, but ultimately you're very reliant on them being on the bus with you and wanting to very much grow as an individual and learn. And so I think you have to always look beyond what a CV says to look at how an individual performs. What are the do's? What are the don'ts when working that individual? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And how can we maximize their potential within our organization? And there are many business leaders within the Vital Energi business that are absolutely committed to going on those types of journeys with people that we employ, and want to be part of our team. And I think one of the things that stands out for me is the overwhelming desire for those individuals to try hard and perform at their best and constantly learn and grow.
I think that's great because you give someone an opportunity to do something they really want to do, but maybe think early on in their kind of young careers, I'm not going to get a chance to do that. You know, someone's going to have to invest in me if I want to do that. To then actually find a business who actually want to make that commitment to you as an individual it does promote the right attitude, the right work ethic, doesn't it? And people then want to return that favor in some. It's not really a favor, is it? Because actually you're partnering together on solving a really big issue. And I think a lot of businesses out there could probably listen to that and think, what are we doing? Because the tendency can be that, companies within a sector try to pinch people from each other and, take resource from a competitor. But ultimately it's a zero-sum game because, as we've already said, that 400,000 job requirement, currently there aren't enough people in the sector to deliver on that. So the only way you're gonna be able to meet that is by attracting people from elsewhere. And I really like what you do at Vital to address that. And one of the things that I really wanted to zone in a little bit, Mike, because we talked a bit about leadership, particularly your experience of learning to be a leader as you went through that Hayden Young Balfour Beatty process and then through to Vital Energi as well. And I guess I wanted to just ask you a bit more about the topic of kind of leadership resilience, because it's something which is really, really important to have, but it's also something which is maybe a little bit hard to quantify. So I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts around what it takes to build that resilience as a leader.
Great question. So I think resilience isn't something you realize you're building until you look back and think about situations you've been in and how you've dealt with them. I, like everybody, will wake up some days and think, wow, today's going to be a difficult day. How am I going to get through it?
Yeah.
And there's the first piece of resilience, recognizing that day is going to be difficult and still walking straight into it. Today's world, we all understand some of the challenges of going to work and sort of overcoming those barriers. My experience has been that you really to put great people around you that will support you on that journey. Great people working with, I've incredible people I've worked with over the years. Have always helped me through those really difficult days. They've always challenged me, and they've equally supported me. And there's a number of people that I would always rely on for advice. And I think that's what creates resilience. One of my things, I think, is thinking. So I always tend to play out situations in my mind well before the situation actually occurs. I'll spend hours on the golf course or walking or actually just cleaning the car, thinking about situations that are going to take place. Even sometimes just reflecting on things and the points I've learned from a situation. I, like others, will snap and react to situations. And as much as that probably winds me up in terms of the learning point from that and why did I do that, I will think about that situation and how I deal with it differently. Because ultimately, my behavior impacts on other people's behavior. And that's often referred to as the leadership shadow. So what I choose to say and what I choose to do, what I prioritize and what I measure ultimately impacts on how people perform around me. So if I'm a miserable bugger, then actually it's unlikely that anyone else is going to be anything other than a miserable bugger.
Yeah.
So I think being able to understand that and recognize that even though I may have a difficult day, I will make everyone else's day much more difficult if I live in that space.
Yeah.
So being able to push yourself into an environment that sets the right leadership tone and equally be highly effective with it. So don't ask people just to do jobs for the sake of doing jobs. Make sure the purpose of doing a task is properly understood. And then I think that comes really down to what I would describe those 5 areas of management. So being able to set the objectives, being able to coach people, praise them, acknowledge them, support them with workload and priorities. I think leadership and management for me tend to fall around those 2 pillars. And that's been challenged over the last few years. It always continues to surprise me that even over the last 12 months or so, I've been involved in a number of leadership events. And we've worked with an organisation called Team Academy, a local organisation to our business in Blackburn, and led by an incredible lady called Rachel Haslam. Rachel doesn't do boring old training courses. So we've had some experiences over the last few years where Rachel takes us into environments which are definitely not normal training environments.
Go on, give us an example.
The wilderness of the Lake District, being able to put yourself in really emotionally exposed situations and very much removing the layers of bravado that exist within us as people, to get down to some of our core beliefs, to test the way we are as leaders. So Rachel's worked right across our business. Most recently, she's done some work with us as business leaders, but her organisation, Team Academy, support our emerging leaders program. So building up from apprentices, which is something I'm sure we'll touch on in terms of skills gap again, and graduates, which is another area of focus for Vital. We then look at the gap that then exists between those individuals that are learning their trade and those leaders of the future. And we've created an emerging leaders program where Rachel Haslam and her team at Team Academy, working with Preston College, support us in growing our talent. And then we've recognised there's another part of our business, which are our future leaders. So these are absolutely some of those bright young things that will be doing our jobs of the future, no danger. They are hugely impressive individuals, and we're creating an environment where they can challenge us as the board of directors at Vital around what we're doing and why we're doing it. So that's a really great space to spend time and listen, be involved with our future leaders, and really appreciate the contributions they're making across our organisation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you touched there on the importance of investing in apprentices and graduates, and then I guess the fact that you provide them with that pathway where they can actually see, well, I may be coming in as apprentice, but look, I can see the people 5 years ahead of me who are already in this level of the organisation. Or even they can look at someone like you, Mike, who has gone from that journey from apprentice right the way through to managing director. And it gets to be really interesting to get some advice from you for maybe aspiring young leaders, maybe people who are entering into the industry fresh and think, do you know what, I'd like a little bit of that. I'd like to go on a similar journey to what Mike's gone on. Do you want to maybe give some tips and advice as to how they should be thinking and framing that even early on in their career?
Yeah, I'd love to. It probably is a space for me that I'm really proud of in terms of what we're doing at Vital. I look back at how my career started. It started with somebody putting an advert in a local paper that I responded to. It started with somebody investing in me and giving me the opportunity to grow and learn. And then ultimately, I worked as hard as I could to achieve. At Vital, we're creating that similar legacy pattern. We see recruiting apprentices, both a technical apprentice, so somebody that will work on, in the olden days, I'd say a drawing board, but today it's our CAD machines and our all of our software platforms that we use today, or a craft apprentice. So that part of our business hasn't really changed in 30 years or so. So we still require people to absolutely contribute to making heat stations and pipework installations and electrical installations. So we have a craft and a technical route for our apprentices. We then have our graduate program. The pathway is slightly different for both, but that is absolutely about the legacy we want to create, and absolutely about we will give them the opportunity, but it's for them to fulfill their own potential. For me, it is about taking accountability for your own personal growth. As a business leader, I can support you, but I can't get you to grow yourself. You have to want to do that. You have to apply yourself. You have to put in the hours, and you have to differentiate yourself as somebody that wants to achieve more and continue to grow. And if you do that, we'll be there to catch you, because we want people like that in our organization growing, because that's the future of our organization and the net zero journey. The skills shortage that you refer to, the statistics you've shared, they are absolutely the space that we need to collectively address as business leaders. And untapping potential is one of the easiest ways of doing it, because it is allowing the people that want to grow the opportunity to grow.
Absolutely. That's great. And before we kind of close up, I wanted to maybe just shine a light on a little bit more of an area of your personal life, Mike. And we've known each other for a while. I know that you're a very good golfer and you're very modest about it. I'm a 14 handicap on the good year. Ish. But I know you played golf essentially all your life, haven't you, Mike? And you played to low figures. And we've had a number of conversations in the past about, I guess, parallels between that and between kind of business and the resilience required in both of those areas. And I've always found your comment to be really interesting. I wonder it might be something that you'd be happy to share here as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So golf has absolutely been a passion of mine since I was Well, since before my teenage years, and for those of you that know me, you'll know that I'm fast approaching a big milestone over the next 12 months or so. So I've been playing golf for well over 35 years,
Wow.
and I was introduced to golf by my grandparents. They did me an incredible favor of making sure I had golf clubs, and they actually got me into a golf club locally, playing golf with. I suppose kids at that stage that shared a similar ambition as I did
Mm,
to hit a golf ball around a golf course and have great fun together.
mm,
I never appreciated looking back to those early years how significant golf would be in my life, and equally how it would correlate to business.
mm.
So it sounds a bit weird that, and it probably applies for many sports, but I've lived with golf for more than 35 years, and what I've learned from playing golf is you can't just rock up on a Saturday morning or as my colleagues would say, a Monday afternoon, a Tuesday afternoon, a Wednesday afternoon to play golf. But you can't just rock up at the golf course and expect to shoot the lights out of it.
Yeah.
And business is exactly the same. You can't just rock up into a business and
Mm,
expect to be a great business leader without understanding the principles of the game.
mm,
So with golf, we all know it's about how you hold the club. It's about which direction you're pointing. It's around your routine and your discipline. Great golfers, if you watch them on the TV, will basically do the same thing over every shot.
mm,
They will have a pre-shot routine or a pre-shot discipline. But before that, before they get to the golf course, they'll have thought about what they're eating. They'll have thought about how they're training. They'll have thought about how much time they're going to give to practice at the golf course. They'll even have a routine on the practice round. Business is so similar.
mm,
You know, you should not go into meetings without understanding what the purpose of the meeting is and who's going to be there, what your audience is, what the objectives of the meeting are, and actually making sure you've researched the subject matter to a point where you can participate in that meeting in a
mm.
professional way. You then go back to the golf course and you have a situation on the golf course where you're on the first tee and you hit an amazing shot or you hit a rubbish shot. And the challenge there is to pick yourself up or to enjoy that moment, but to stay level headed.
Mm,
Business is exactly the same. There's no point blowing your top in a meeting or equally sitting there silently and not contributing.
mm,
You've got to understand the pattern of how you go through business. And then coming back to the golf course, it doesn't just happen.
mm.
So I know today, even after more than 35 years of playing the game, I still have golf lessons. Um, I've described today an environment where we work with Team Academy because at business, I still have coaching.
Mm,
I still go back to the basics of leadership and management and how we operate as business leaders because we all need to practice.
mm,
Um, coming to work and doing our job should not be necessarily be the area that we practice in. We should all look at how we grow as individuals and remind ourselves of the principles of great leadership and great business management. So I can draw a huge amount of similarities between how I go about playing golf and how great golfers go about playing golf.
mm.
So I'm not going to put myself in that category, but I will say extremely enthusiastic. And yeah, I suppose I look back over some of my golf successes and I'm really proud of it. But I look over business and say I'm really proud of my career as well so
Mm,
far. And I know equally in golf that the best years are still ahead of me.
yeah.
So I've got a wiser head on my shoulders. I will throw those clubs less. I will definitely try to break less of them.
Yeah.
But equally know that keeping the golf ball on the golf course is the secret to great scoring.
Mm,
Business is exactly the same. Try and keep everyone on the team going in the right direction and
mm.
you'll get the best results.
Absolutely, and there's such a correlation between kind of high performing sports people and good business people because that mentality it definitely seeps in. And one of the things again that you mentioned earlier in the conversation was just the mentality that every day is a school day. And I think you can see how that really blends from, I guess, what you do in your personal life and your time playing golf and also business as well. And I'll certainly be listening to your tips about playing golf, that's for sure. So just as we close, Mike, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your expertise. For those people who are listening who might be interested in learning more about some of the things that you've talked about, maybe they want to hear more about career opportunities in Vital Energy, maybe they want to ask a few questions around leadership and dig into some of the things that you've really helpfully mentioned, how can they do that?
just reach out to me. So I'm really active on LinkedIn, and if you go to the Vital Energy website, you'll find my mobile number, you'll find my email address. So I'm super accessible. Feel free to reach out to me. We'll make contact, and we'll have a conversation. We are absolutely an organisation that is open-minded to how we grow, learning from our growth, and sharing that with other people that would like to be part of our future. So yeah, reach out, and we'll do a follow-up.
Wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for listening to the Real Assets, Real Value podcast. And we look forward to coming back again for the next episode. We'll see you soon.